So we really look at the whole situation of Ukraine in a positive way. And I think that for us, the war in Ukraine and also the entire geopolitical environment that we're facing as the European Union has really forced us to think not about if they will join the European Union, but when. And we spend a lot of our time thinking, because we're a think tank, about the how. The new report from the Commission advising EU leaders to open negotiations with Ukraine obviously makes this a very timely event, and the forthcoming December Council meeting as well. We've published extensively on the topic of Ukraine, everything from defence and security, because without Ukraine in the EU, we don't believe that the European Union will be secure in the future. We also have a study, which is actually outside. All of our studies on Ukraine are outside on the table and downstairs, on post-war reconstruction and EU integration. The study is written and reviewed jointly by experts from Ukraine and the EU, and it highlights how Ukraine can not only benefit from EU membership, but also benefit the EU as a whole when it joins. And although rapid progression of the Ukraine's candidacy for the EU brings a new dimension to the narrative, we still need to ask ourselves about whether or not this is a real deviation from the script of integration, or we're going to see the same stagnated process. So the other thing that we've really worked on is the concept of staged integration, which is about pushing forward EU enlargement into a new and much more dynamic force. Some of the elements of this staged integration concept include accruing membership benefits along the way, and also reversing that if there's been backsliding. So you can read more about our staged integration study there outside. And we've also been doing a Western Balkans tour. Recently we've been to North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also Serbia to talk about staged integration. And we also had a meeting today in the European Parliament with the Renew Europe group to talk about this. But while we have a positive approach from the European Liberal Forum, it is also important to hear all sides. And even the skeptical view you're going to hear tonight, what I would challenge everybody on the panel is skepticism is, I think, a healthy intellectual tool. However, it is only a healthy intellectual tool if you also use it to think of solutions to problems. So that's what I hope that we're going to hear from all of you tonight. So we're very happy to be hosting this event with our member IPBS. And I really hope that you enjoyed the discussion. And please do, as I said, take the publications. We work hard on them, and I think they provide not just the political input, but also the technical input on how we're going to achieve proper integration of Ukraine into the EU. Thank you. And
let me introduce the panelists. Let's start with newcomer, Her Excellency Ambassador of Czech Republic at the European Union, Edita Hrdá. Welcome. Tony Barber is a European editor of prestigious daily Financial Times, who has actually published a few articles related to this topic. Welcome. Thank you. Let me welcome Kira Rudyk, Vice President of ALDE Party and Member of Ukrainian Parliament. Welcome. And Ondřej Knotek is a member of European Parliament nominated by ANO Party. Welcome. Good evening. It seems to me, when I was looking at the topic, that as far as Ukrainians' membership in the EU, we can expect more troubles from us, from the members of the European Union who are already in, than from the Ukraine. For the Ukraine, it certainly will not be an easy task, but if you look at the previous waves of enlargement, it doesn't seem to be very something which is not like such a huge problem. If you look at the level of corruption, for instance, there was also a huge level of corruption when, for instance, Romania was accepted to the European Union. If we speak about the size of the country, Poland was also quite a huge size country when EU was enlarged also, and Poland was accepted into the country. It's obviously very poor relatively to, especially to the Western Europe, but in the previous waves of enlargement, countries like Bulgaria, Romania, and also Poland were quite poor. It's even though Ukrainian is huge as far as the population, it will increase the economy of the European Union by 1% only. So it seems to me that it's possible to overcome these troubles. And as far as Ukraine is concerned, I tend to be quite optimistic. But I expect more troubles on the part of current EU members, because EU will have to reform itself, and it will have to reform its institution. It will have to open the treaties. It will have to reform the voting system in the institutions. It will have to reform a very sensitive topic, agriculture policy, which is consuming a major part of EU's budget, and there is a pressure to cancel the veto of particular countries in foreign policy that was quite clearly mentioned by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz at his speech in Prague, by the way. So it seems to me like that important countries of founding countries of the European Union would create quite a pressure that cancelling the veto would be a precondition for taking someone in. And plus, it's hard to imagine that Ukraine will be taken in besides or without other countries which are already waiting in line. It was mentioned by my predecessor. Definitely, we speak about Albania, Montenegro, Serbia, Northern Macedonia, but there are also other countries. There is also Georgia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Kosovo, perhaps. So it will be quite a wave, and also there is this example of Turkey that we kind of lost Turkey, and no one is these days really taking it seriously that Turkey will ever end up in the European Union, but its application has never been cancelled or taken back. So sorry for maybe too long kickoff of the discussion, but so my question is, and I would start with, if I may, with Tony. Do you think I am right if I expect more troubles from the European Union than from Ukraine? What's your take on it?
Thank you very much. To give an answer straight away to your question, you can expect a bit of difficulty on both sides. I'm not sure you can quantify it and say it will be 51-49 or something like that, but there will be difficulties on both sides. But just to make my own personal position clear in this, I mean, I do very much stand in favor of Ukrainian membership, and I think everything should be done in the most imaginative way possible to bring that about. Yet we all know that it's not going to be straightforward, and I'd like to try and phrase some of the issues at stake in a less conventional way than they're often put. They're often put as if it's, on the one hand, can Ukraine meet the requirements, the economic standards, the acquis, the rule of law, democracy, and so on. And on the other hand, can the European Union itself reform its own institutions and financial arrangements and so on in order to accommodate Ukraine and other candidate members? I think that second point needs looking at in more detail. One of the difficulties with internal reform of the EU is that it's not it wouldn't take place in some kind of vacuum. It would take place after what I see as something like 20 years of repeated crises and emergencies in the EU, starting with the enormous difficulties in passing the previous treaty, the Lisbon Treaty, originating in the collapse of the proposed constitutional treaty at the start of this century. That has put a lot of countries on guard about how awkward it would be to go through a process of treaty reform that might require a vote and a referendum at home. We saw the difficulties in France and the Netherlands and Ireland, among others, 20-odd years ago. At the same time, the nature of the emergencies that have sprung up in the last 2 decades have meant that resistance to enlargement now takes place within national societies. It's not just a case of some governments being critical of it, whereas other governments are in favour. One sees popular movements inside countries reflected in the emergence of new political movements. We see it in Germany, we see it in France. These movements are capable of having great impact on politics as practiced in their own countries, and this in turn causes a rebound effect on the policies around subjects like EU enlargement. And I think there could be a lot of difficulties here. The fact that one particular government might set out an approach to enlargement doesn't mean that it won't be vulnerable to political challenge on its own territory. And I think that means that there will be considerable wariness about opening up the question of treaty reform. Beyond that, though, there is the question of whether the types of issues that have been very divisive in the EU in the last 20 years or so, such as values, the rule of law and democracy, whether it's entirely clear how Ukraine approaching membership would place itself on these questions. If one looks at one of the sensitive issues for the countries that joined in 2004 onwards, it was the fact that these countries had regained sovereignty, national sovereignty, for the first time in many decades after some terrible experiences under dictatorships, or indeed become nation states for the first time. Think of, say, Slovenia or Slovakia, properly independent nation states, I mean. And so there was a certain reluctance to yield too much on the question of national sovereignty in the name of a more integrated EU 5 minutes after you've just acquired it. And the question is, where would Ukraine stand on this? Ukraine's independence and sense of national dignity and independence has been born out of a terrible, terrible experience of war, much bloodshed, terrible sacrifices. The idea of what Ukraine's independence stands for is very much associated with a kind of statehood and self-protection. And the question is whether the kind of reforms needed to make a much larger EU work, that would, for example, moving to more majority voting on a number of issues, whether Ukraine would feel comfortable in that, having so soon asserted itself as a properly independent national state. I think that is an important thing to keep in mind. I would perhaps just finish on what seems to me the awkward question of how one looks at the kind of unofficial or semi-official Franco-German proposal for a kind of 4-tier Europe that would involve an inner core and then a kind of second core and then sort of outer levels, outer circles, if you like. Of course, this idea has a rich French tradition. It goes back, all the way to Mitterrand around the end of the Cold War. The question in my mind is whether that idea, which in some ways overlaps with the idea of phased integration, whether it might at some point accidentally or otherwise turn into an excuse to have Ukraine and other candidate members not fully in the EU, but rather in some, maybe not fourth, but certainly third or second circle. That seems to me a possible pitfall on the way, bearing in mind that there are some thinkers and political forces, particularly in Western Europe, that have wanted this all along anyway. So I think that needs to be kept in mind. I'll pause there because everyone else must be itching to have their say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kira, please.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to be here and to speak to you. There are so many things that we are to discuss today. And from Ukraine's side, I can tell you a couple of things that I want you to remember. First, it was probably the first, oh, my phone, okay. It was the first good news that we've got since full-scale invasion started. It was last year when the candidacy to European Union was announced. And it was a huge morale boost for Ukrainian people because we have seen that it is possible for us not only to have this, limited future, that is, we win the war and then something, but also that we have a future in European family, something that is written in our constitution. Right now, we had another huge morale boost that is, European Commission made this report where they say that we are doing very well. And then we will have another boost, we hope, at the European Council gathering. And then there would be a lot of work, probably years of work in front of us before something else would happen. And I think it is very important for all of us to understand this and to manage the expectations that are coming from political level and that are coming from organizational levels. Though, as for a politician, I know it is very hard to say to people, it will happen, but the time we cannot tell you. And of course, there are many points there. Well, right now, all the 7 points that we have almost completed, and we have done very well on them. This is what the report says. They were all expected. That is not something new for us, and they were all in line with the IMF requirements, with all the reforms that our country really definitely needs. When we go into the next 7,000 points that we will have once we hope that these charters will open for us, there would be many questionable points that will require a lot of debates. Like you said, the agricultural matter, that would be incredibly painful, and we will have to find a very good solution to that. So, as Alva said, that we have to be skeptical but also find a solution. I think we always need to think about those obstacles in advance and try to figure out a proper way to remove the roadblocks. There is one thing that I'm extremely passionate about that could fix one of the issues that we are going to discuss today. Probably it's a matter of money and matter of budget. One of the key arguments that I hear about why it would be so complicated for European Union to get Ukraine in is it would require lots of money from European taxpayers because there would be a rebuild, and as you said, Ukraine's economy is 1% of EU's economy. So here is the thing. There is one aspect and one project and direction that we are working on, and it is called confiscating of Russian frozen assets. Recently, we had Josep Borrell in Kiev, and he said that over the term of full-scale invasion, the total amount of EU military help to Ukraine has been 25 billion euro. It's a tremendous amount, but guess what? The amount of frozen Russian assets, oligarch and state assets, in democratic countries is 20 times that amount. And this is something that I believe is truly, logically, fairly, something that should be confiscated and used for the sake of Ukraine. Not even for the rebuild of Ukraine, but also to cover for the expenses that European countries have right now to support us militarily and all the ways. So a year ago, when we came up and started working on it a year and a half ago, everybody thought that we were crazy and that it is absolutely impossible. You cannot imagine the amount of no's that we heard and like how do you say, skeptical, but without this productive part. And so after that, we have pushed so many parliamentarians, so many members of European Parliament, so many friends throughout the world, and here are the results that we see right now, just to show you the progress that is possible. Canadian government has passed the legislation. US government has passed like a very weak, but also legislation that would allow to use Russian assets for the sake of Ukraine. In EU, Kaja Kallas said that till the end of the year, your Estonian parliament will come with a solution legislatively. And recently, our good friend and liberal ally, Alexander De Croo, has issued a way through the government, without even a parliament, to take the percentage, the interest that have appeared on the frozen Russian assets, and the amount of this interest is pretty significant. It's 1.4 billion euros. A good thing to cover for many expenses that Belgium has, many expenses that EU has. And we do believe that there would be more and more countries that could go like that. Because you know better than me, in politics, it's the precedent that makes sense. It's the first person who does something scary or something that nobody was never done before. And then the rest would follow and say, yeah, well, okay, we also found this solution. So we are pushing to that, and I'm arming all of you and all of our panelists with this argument when you hear a thing, oh, we should not be spending money to Ukraine, or the EU expansion would require changes to our budget. Here is the real thing. We don't want people who actually support us with their hearts, with their minds, also to support them with their tax dollars. There is money for that. And there is a fair and logical and legal ways of taking those money and using them for the right thing, of making Putin pay for what he has done, and not making everybody in this room and everywhere in Europe to make what is done. Thank you.
Edita, please.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm sorry that I came late, but I was exactly sitting in a meeting where we were looking into the budget of the European Union and where we take these very necessary 50 billion euros, which should be there for the next years to come for macro-financial assistance, etc. So this Ukrainian facility, which we would like to create, if possible, till the end of this year, so that the Ukrainian friends have the resources which are needed to be there to defend themselves, and then also to, and you said it rightly, to start to produce so that the financial possibilities would be there. It's not only about us paying, European Union, the US, IMF and others, but it is also about that the Ukraine is producing. It's incredible. The country is in the war, but still the economy is running. The men are there in the combats, and the other one who stayed home, and the women and all the nation is trying their best. And they achieved what they have achieved, and congratulations, because we were waiting for the package for a long time. The Commission was really working hardly. This was not only Ukraine. the evaluation by the Commission, but this time it was totally record for 10 countries. This package, and of course it's up to the member states to pronounce themselves with the Council conclusions at the end of December and evaluating what then should be done. And I think that Ukraine is there with such a high profile is admirable and really, again, congratulations from our side. It is, of course, quite difficult. I always repeat to all colleagues from Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership that I do remember very well the time when we were negotiating the accession to the European Union, and how many times we were really thinking we are there, and how many times there were more conditions coming, and we had to sit down again and to maybe adjust and go through more reforms. But then the date came and we were very, very happy. When we start now to think about the enlargement in general, of course these who see how the European Union is functioning now, having 27 when we had 28 member states, then fully understandable is that by 35 it would not be possible to go ahead with such a kind of decision making, because as Mr. Kissinger once said, where is the telephone number I have to call if I want to speak with Europe? And everything in the eyes of our allies, also of our allies, and especially of the others, it takes too long time, so we need to speed up a bit. I have to say that now, after the COVID crisis and with that what is happening in Ukraine, it's admirable how quickly we are able to agree and decide. This is something where we haven't been in the past. We should recognize it, and I very much hope also that the decisions we will make in December will be the right ones, and that also the Ukrainians will be happy about that. We will do everything possible as a Czech Republic, let me say. Speaking about decision making, it is very difficult in certain issues when we start to speak about that, how we should decide. Qualified majority, there is also the minority, blocking minority. We should not forget about it. But there are certain topics where if there is decision through qualified majority and then the member states don't feel well about this decision, or is it something which is really disturbing internally in the internal politics of the member states, then never ever it works well. We can look at migration issues where before the decisions were made in certain topics, and then not everybody was on the board, and you can see it, and the decision making is much more difficult after such a decisions. So it should be something different. We see, and you were speaking about the circles, but we see the circles already now. We have countries which are part of Schengen. We have even countries which are not member states of the European Union, and they are part of Schengen. We have the countries which have euro. Not everybody is in Eurozone, so this kind of different decision makings and bringing the member states together does exist already. We only don't speak about it very often. This is also important to have in mind. And of course, I think that certain reforms are needed. Many of them we are able to make them in the margin of the treaties we have now through passerelles and others, and we are now really looking at it in the internal discussion. So I don't see enlargement as such a big issue. Speaking about decision processes, of course, these who are against enlargement will use it fully, and this is absolutely clear. But I think that the gradual approach, it was called before gradual approach, maybe we will have other term for that in the future, is something where we can see how the things could work. And Ukraine is a very good example, by the way, because when the war started and we wanted to make certain things easier, the integration, for example, in the energy market, this is something what never ever happened before. It's working, it's very good and very positive. And it's not only Ukraine, it's also Moldova. And it's there. And we can live with it and it's no problem. So I think this possibility to go ahead is there. It's only up to us how quickly we proceed and how quickly we make our internal agreements.
Thank you, Edita. And I would like to ask Ondřej now for his opening remarks.
Yeah, very good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The enlargement is often perceived as a bonus or add value for the particular country to join the EU. But those who profit are all. And I would say especially the EU, because through integrating internal market and also through bigger geopolitical power, we are stronger. And I think we can profit most if we reach a situation that all European states are under one roof. And I think this should be our common target. Maybe there are different pathways, there are different styles, there are different configurations, as Madam Ambassador explained. One country pays euro, one not, one is in Schengen, one not, etc. But at this, in other words, somehow we are going one direction. Now we are in a situation when, based on this illegal, crazy, terrific aggression, the states that are in the buffer zone between the EU and Russia are, let's say, thinking in a speedy way, okay, shall we go now with the EU as a safe harbor with values, democracy, bureaucracy, but still values and democracy, or we should go to Russia or stay alone. And it's not a surprise that for most of them the answer is we shall try to head towards EU, towards NATO, towards stable allies. And this is extremely occasion for European Union to handle that process. And to answer, and here comes the original question of Mr. Macháček, okay, so where are the barriers? Is it more, when we now talk about specifically Ukraine, is Ukraine ready and is the EU ready? And the honest answer on honest question is today both sides are not ready. While when we look to Ukraine, I'm fully convinced that the motivation is high, the effort is high, and it's only question of a time to get there. I can bring one example. At the time of brutal frontline war, the environmental minister of Ukraine was as a guest on the environmental committee of the European Parliament and exchanging topics about climate change. And he was able, at the time when Ukraine was under attack, or it still is, but at the time was as well, he was able to say, we believe that the reconstruction of Ukraine will be in line with the taxonomy criteria of the EU. For those who don't know, taxonomy is sustainable finance. To be honest, not even every member state is happy to say something like this. So, I mean, it is, and I'm coming from Czech Republic that also has some issues with taxonomy. Yeah. So it confirms that the intention is very serious, and beside the war itself, there are a number of processes and activities that are seriously working. So perhaps not there yet, but one day definitely will be. Then I come to the EU side, and I'm a little bit more skeptical because, to be honest, I think not everyone in the Brussels bubble speak in an honest way. Yeah? It has been, I will not describe all the situation, not to repeat, but the enlargement is taken somehow as a hostage by some member states not to lose power. Because if nothing is changed, and I don't mean the cosmetic changing, I think we all agree that it's not possible to have 33, 34, 35 commissioners. I'm coming from business. I have never seen a board of a company with more than 12 people, and already 12 is enough. Yeah, so I think no one questioned this, and finally there will be volunteers as a first member states to give up their, to have a no commissioner for 1 mandate, and these changes are at the same time simple. But I'm quite afraid that there are some, and I will not name and shame, that speak honestly about, let's have Ukraine on board as soon as possible, but they do not want to transfer the power more to the east, because we are talking about big and quite populated future member state. And they also take this reason, this enlargement, as a hostage to control their power. And on the other side, the eastern member states, they don't want to lose the last pieces of full sovereignty. And this is equation which is on the table. It's kind of, I don't like this word, but it's an elephant in the room. And even as an engineer, mathematical solution of this equation doesn't seem so easy. So what is important, and where I want to land in the introduction, is that we shall speak very honestly among each other, because if we don't, there will be not realistic expectations from both sides, or not even both, it's all sides. And as we have heard, Ukrainian population perhaps believes that while 7 criteria are fulfilled, Ukraine is basically in Europe, but it's on the contrary, it's only the beginning. And when we are talking about integration of Ukraine, I'm not sure if the citizens are aware about positives and negatives that must be managed. Okay, so we need a deeper dialogue in the society to have more understanding, to manage the process, and through proper management we can then even shorten the process. But I would definitely not be there to say, to grant a concrete date for accession, not because I would not be willing to, but it could cause much more damage, because first we need to talk honestly among each other. It is fair to all, and especially to Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ondřej. And I would like to have 2 questions for Tony. One is, if we imagine that there is this like inner core and outer layer of the within the EU. First question is, we speak about Ukraine, so it might sound a little bit impolite for someone, but just briefly, some people believe that if there is an outer zone which is less integrated somehow, or that there would be a chance for UK to come back together with Ukraine. That would be a chance if there is a sort of like inner core and outer layer of integration within the EU, that it would be a chance for UK perhaps to come back, UK for Britain to come back together with Ukraine.
Being such a, I like to think of myself as a great friend of Ukrainians, so I'd be very happy to be in the company of Ukrainians anywhere you like. I'm sure though that Ukraine's ambitions to be a full member of the EU go much, much farther than those of the present government in London. But we'll see. These things are going to, a certain kind of sting has to be removed from the wound first, I think, in the UK.
And second question, it seems to me that traditionally it was a policy of France to have this like perhaps more integrated inner core of the Eurozone, but they never it was always opposed by Germany, which didn't, which wanted to have the same level of integration also for Eastern Europe, Eurozone, not Eurozone. Do you think that German position might change in this respect and be more in line with these traditional French proposals now?
Well, as I was trying to indicate in my earlier remarks, I think it oversimplifies to talk about one German position that would be unchanging as events move forward through the process of trying to encourage enlargement. There are different positions in Germany. The days when Germany was a society that kind of passively let its political leaders define what German policy in and around the EU should be, those have long gone. I mean, it's now quite a sharply divided society in ways that it wasn't a generation ago. As regards a kind of common French-German position, I mean, there are still a number of issues that they find it quite difficult to see eye to eye on actually these days. But where at least to take what they say in public at face value, they seem to agree that there should be a wide-ranging agreement on institutional reform before enlargement takes formal shape. So that, I think, could be difficult in the sense that if we were to take just the issue of foreign policy, I mean, I think it's a very good point that the kind of center of gravity of a EU with 30 plus members clearly would be moving eastwards, and this would be something that might raise some doubts in the older Western European states. And at the same time, we mustn't forget that countries like the Baltic states and Poland and others were absolutely horrified at things like the Nord Stream project that was driven by Germany. Would they want a foreign policy decided by majority voting that ever allowed something like that to happen again? I mean, no. So it's not clear to me that countries in Central and Eastern Europe would necessarily be all in favour of majority voting on an issue like foreign policy.
Thank you. And I would have two questions on Kira. Also, first one is, aren't you afraid, like Ukrainians, that EU's recent history is not very positive as far as enlargement process is concerned? We already, maybe a lot of you have been here in May when we had a discussion here on Ukraine in NATO and Ukraine in EU also. So Jacques Rupnik remembered that he was celebrating opening the negotiations with Macedonians. They were not even Northern Macedonians at the time. It was like 2005 in Paris. So it's almost 20 years. And we are not... Are Ukrainians realizing that EU recent history is not quite optimistic about it? Whatever people say and whatever in rhetoric politicians are very welcoming, but the practice isn't very positive at the moment, doesn't seem very positive.
Are you asking about political class or people on the street?
Well, I am asking about both.
Okay. So again, my favorite example is about my father, who has, he knows nothing about politics, and his feeling is not about EU's past or anything that happened. He feels, by the way that it is presented in media, that we are almost already in EU, but the paperwork is somewhere in the mail. And he said, I'm okay to wait, just a little bit. So this is the feeling right now. And this is why I started with managing the expectations, because what we are seeing is a lot of work in front of us, and we will have to explain to people why is it taking the time that it is taking. Second, when we are talking about the past, and our colleague states situations. I think geopolitically it was a different situation, and right now when we were talking, I wanted to ask a room this hanging question. Can we imagine EU not expanding? Can we imagine saying, okay, no, these things will remain status quo? Because I think with issues that we are facing geopolitically, that is kind of impossible. And the main narrative of Russian propaganda in all the countries that we mentioned, Western Balkans, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, is exactly this. You are not welcome there, they do not want you, and you will always be second-class citizens. And we may think that right now when Ukraine is fighting and people are dying, this propaganda will be very weak, but it is not. They are pouring lots of money there. And then the question is about like, would the actions confirm that, or would there be something else happening? And we are looking at 2024, a year where I think half of the world will have elections, right? We counted that will be like at least 49 elections that can influence our well-being, starting from the elections in the United States, obviously, and national elections in some of the EU states, EU elections, and many others. And we know that if we think the world is changing quickly right now, then it will change significantly next year, and we look at it as a very not favorable for Ukraine, obviously, and there would be many risks. But to your point, we do not think that everything that has been in the past mattered because it was a completely different world. Right now, I do not think that democratic leaders have a chance to say, okay, let's wait for 7-10 years and see what happens. Because there are authoritarian regimes in the world that can plan ahead, that don't have to worry about the elections, and that can plan to increase their influence and build, using the democratic elections, build them, their allies even inside the EU. So right now the situation calls for a stronger approach and for a stronger European leadership. And we know that. And that would have to make the decisions to, like, if there were for 12 years no decision, to say, well, okay, get in. Or I think that what the decision for Georgia, for European Commission report, that was a decision saying, yes, we know that you have like tons of problems and you have the majority in your parliament that says that you don't even want to EU, but our doors are open and now they're open for real. This is how we read it, and this is what I want to believe is going to happen. Because again, coming back to my question, do you feel that there is an option for a status quo?
Thank you. So I have reserved a second question for a second round, but I would ask Edita now. It was already partially explained by Kira that geopolitically we are somewhere else, but could you perhaps compare our experience or common EU-Turkish experience? So Turkey has been applying in the process of entering for 30 years or something, almost. And what's the difference between the failure or this road going to nowhere and Ukraine? What's your take on this?
I know you for a long time, and I know that you can ask provocative questions, so you cannot expect from me that I would answer it. But yeah, I was writing my remarks, and it was about the arguments a bit, and this is about the arguments also, comparing, you know, when we started, and again I'm coming back into our history, this is something what we can compare, what we experience. When we started to negotiate the accession, it was very complicated. We had our aim and we were trying our best. But the European Union was developing. And as we were negotiating, also the situation in the European Union was changing. So the adjustments in the negotiations were very, very much needed. And of course, it's about it how quickly all the reforms are prepared. It's not so easy. It is legislation, it's parliament, it's the people. They have to decide if they want or if they don't want to change such a way. Apparently, in some negotiations, which are taking for so long time now, and not so many chapters are open, or many chapters are open, but they were never closed, means that the adjustments between that, how the European Union is evolving and how the internal situation in the country and the political willingness is evolving, are simply not matching, and it takes time. It is easy. When we look at that, what Ukraine now did and how far you were, and there were the seven conditions, and you fulfilled almost everything. There is 90% fulfilled, and there's still something lacking. What is this? Rule of law, corruption, certain values, where, and without any doubt, I would say even inside the European Union, the conditions and the idea about it, how to fulfill certain steps and issues, are more and more and more demanding, and this is clear. As we see what is happening around us, of course, the conditions are getting maybe for some more and more complicated, and that's why, and I'm coming back to your question, maybe the negotiations in the case of Turkey are where they are, because there is not this willingness to be similar to us, come closer to us. Is there the willingness in the other countries which are negotiating? Are there more and more conditions coming from certain member states in that case? And I will take only one, and please don't quote me. It's Northern Macedonia. You used it. And we have seen during our presidency how difficult it was. When one of the member states was coming and was bringing clear arguments, and it was absolutely sure to everybody and clear that without these, accomplishing these conditions, they would never ever come to the parliament and simply say, okay, we accept this country or not. And you do remember very well, I think, our internal issues, internal politics, when our society starts to split, is the question of Sudeten Germans. Second World War, all the history we went through, it is very European. And these issues are here. Still we hear different arguments in Europe, and some questions are very tricky and very difficult, and maybe it will take some more time till then we come to that the reconciliation can come, and then we agree, and we will be looking forward into the future.
Tony wants to add something.
Yeah, I think the point Edita mentioned there about North Macedonia is really important. I mean, the highly unusual conditions that Bulgaria laid down as essential for North Macedonia's progress towards accession would set a really bad precedent, because you could look at every single candidate country now, including Ukraine, and there would be one existing EU member state who could say, you know what, I've got some conditions very similar to those that Bulgaria laid down for North Macedonia, and the rest of the EU accepted Bulgaria's conditions, so you can accept mine as well. Every single country could face an obstacle like that. It will take a real effort of maturity and goodwill to stop that happening.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Ondřej, what's your take on the veto? You already touched it a little bit, but can you imagine that Czech Republic or Poland would ever give up the veto in foreign policy. On the other hand, can you imagine that Germany would change its position, as it was clearly declared by Olaf Scholz in Prague, that this is the way to go with the enlargement to change these rules?
I wanted to react on 2 good points mentioned in the previous debate, but I will first try to answer your question. Hopefully I will not forget the 2 points. I mean, never say no to anything, but what is in my eyes the root cause is that the internal market, the root cause why we needed to have still some individual power to some time to time, and the point is time to time, not on every meeting on sanctions, yeah, which one member state is doing to have a veto, is that the internal market is not yet fully developed. And I have one sensitive example, which I will say very, very quickly. And I have had chance to work for a Luxembourgish company as a board member of a production plant of that company in Czech Republic. And I have seen the inequality among the citizens. So usually you know that French people are very proud of their nation, but when they came to Luxembourg, they were not treated always equally by some Luxembourgians, because we are Luxembourgians. And then it's long time space, and then maybe the French, then maybe the Germans. On the other side, I have seen how Czech colleagues, workers on the production line, look down on some other colleagues from other member states in Southeastern Europe. And and you cannot stipulate the change by papers. You cannot do it from top to down. It must be natural evolution. And until the German are not, they don't care whether the investment is done in their country or not, it's not possible. The same can be likewise, for example, from the point of Czech Republic. So Europe is not there to give up the veto, and it can happen when the Europe became naturally equal. So that would be my answer. So nice to have, but not there yet. Yeah. Then back to the 2 points. You mentioned one, I think, and you, Mr. Macháček, raised the question. There were 2 questions. One, can we afford to just keep a status quo and not to think about the enlargement? And the second question was, what do you think about the multiple speed Europe or different concentration of Europe, if I might tell it like this? And I would have an answer. If the multiple speed Europe would be a way how to move forward and bring the states under one roof faster, bypassing some bureaucracy and, let's say, preventing some risks, then it could be a good point. I remember somewhere in 2016 I heard Mr. Juncker, the former president of the European Commission, speaking about multiple speed Europe. And I didn't understand him at all. But after 4 years in Brussels, I have real trust that it was very positive, constructive step how to reduce different expectations, different possibilities, because this unique language, at the end you have a compromise. But as I said, for example, the taxonomy, the climate package, Fit for 55, it has different impacts on different member states. I don't know how to do it legally, but maybe more way Europe could be answered to faster integration, and at the end, faster, maybe one European Union with all European states. And I just tell you, I'm not speaking about concrete time. It is too specific debate. Yeah. So I think these were very good points mentioned. And the last point you mentioned, sir, that that the Ukraine is a very brave and proud nation. And of course, you are fighting, you are bleeding. And I know it from myself. We are, as a Czech Republic, we are very proud. And in the 39, 1939, we didn't find, and still we are proud. So how much you must be proud because you simply defend your country. And the question was right. Are you also at the same time ready to lose some of your power, sovereignty, responsibility over your nation? And that's the problem, because in Brussels, often when you say nation, you are immediately colored as someone who is far on a part of political spectrum. So this is also a point that was raised, and is a good point, that of course, as I said, EU is a safe harbor. And I would definitely recommend to all to join the EU. But at the same time, it is always a loss of sovereignty and the blackmailing to make the changes in the treaties in order to enlarge European Union are going the direction that the power would stay more in the West. Yeah? So also that's the question, to which extent the nation is ready to accept it and also is aware, because you clearly said that not everyone is aware. Of course, the national debates are on different priorities. You have a front line, you have war. But would not be good also to cover it in the debate, that to get to the EU means also lose something at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. So 2 points. First, about losing part of the sovereignty. There is a historic part that I want to explain. We are getting, in a week, there would be a 10-year anniversary of the Revolution of Dignity. It happened when students went on streets, and this is where we overthrew our president, Yanukovych. What this president has done is, when the whole country voted that we want to be with EU and to join NATO, he went to Vilnius and signed a deal with Putin that to turn the country around and to have a deal with Russia and integrate in Russian economic space. And people could not take it. And this is when the revolution started, and this is when Russia invaded Ukraine. It happened not in 2022, it happened in 2014. So there would be 10-year, I wouldn't say anniversary, just a date of 10 years when Russia is fighting us, particularly for this matter, that we decided that we want to go away and we want to be members of EU and NATO. And right now it is written in our constitution. So it's like not a will of Ukrainian people, it's a super will. The question, if people understand that being members of EU is losing part of your sovereignty. I'm not quite sure. I don't think there was any political party that took of their like a goal to explain to people that EU is losing part of sovereignty. At least it was not very popular. So this is why I think we will be on a very good path for some time. And I would come to my previous point again. Things that right now on those 7 requirements. And I truly believe that some of the other reforms that are necessary, that are very good for my country. And I'm afraid to say it, if there was like a no end goal at the end, I would still want this process to continue, because it puts a proper political pressure, proper social pressure on us as the country to change for good and become more transparent, have rule of law, have proper processes in place to fight corruption, and just be better and more European in this matter. So as one wise man says, I would like to have this problem when we will come at the point where people start saying, oh, we are so close to getting into EU, maybe we lose our sovereignty or something, and will be a positive debate, because we will say, well, it's written in our constitution, you should have thought beforehand.
Before I open it to your questions, I promised Mr. Paris Alva from member of European Parliament on EPP to have a first question or first intervention, so welcome.
Thank you very much. And actually, if you don't mind, I was in the understanding that I can make a couple of comments and a little bit of analysis of the discussion. First of all, thank you very much for the organizers and the Prague House for allowing me to give my 2 cents on this subject. I should maybe mention the background. I've been a member of the European Parliament a little short of 12 years. I was the chief negotiator for the rule of law conditionality regulation, and I am currently the EPP negotiator for the Ukraine facility from the Budgets Committee. So this is, I guess, why I have maybe a couple of things to say or note about. Well, the basic 3 points that I wanted to make is almost like goes without saying. They are things that have been mentioned. First of all, Ukraine has a long way to come. Second, EU certainly has a long way to go. And third, and this is maybe the most provocative or contradictional point, is that we should not rush with this. And when I say we should not, it's like actively should not politically rush. Let me explain this. I will explain each 3 point a little bit more. First of all, of course, the need for Ukraine to change. Here I would like to bring up the role of Ukraine facility. It is, of course, it's the idea is to keep Ukraine afloat financially. But I personally see even a bigger idea for this, and it's not officially being said anywhere, but the real thing is that with this facility, we will have the first real legislative thing that will put Ukraine in tandem with the EU. And this is, of course, what is absolutely necessary to have. It will be a process where we have to go step by step together in pace. And so if we take one step and it takes some time for you to take a step, then we have to wait. If you take a step and it takes some time for we to synchronize with the readiness and the ability of the European Union to be able to do this properly, then again we have to wait. So this is about the third point as well. But first, and really the legislation on the Ukraine facility is also a big political idea. But technically, it's not about that. But in reality, it is. So second point is that EU, certainly. I mean, we already heard about it, but there has to be a complete revision. And this is the trickiest part. I especially loved what Tony Barber said in the introductory remarks about trying to sort of like give a few layers of the onion here, that we are really not talking about a simple thing. And this, we have to keep this in mind. We have to be very honest in the process. And it may bring about challenges that we actually are not even aware of at the moment. This is the point about that this will not take place in a vacuum. It will be quite a process, I have to say. Also, some of the legislation, like for example the conditionality regulation, I think has to be revised as well along the process. This is for the next term, obviously, but as it is now, the legislative base is in the protection of the EU budget. And we will have a plethora of issues, and not only talking about Ukraine here, but in the coming years towards the end of this decade with this regulation. And then finally, the first, I mean, the point that we really must not rush, and this is also about what Mr. Barber said, that there is a potential in the member states that can get really pretty nasty. So we really have to be careful. But the most important thing here, this is not about, that don't expect too soon or that we have to go slow. That's not my point. The point is that we really have to hold each other tightly and do this together and be really honest in the process. So, yeah, but the Ukraine facility, as I understand, is now stuck in the council, to put it in plain words. I mean, I know European Parliament is ready to negotiate, so as the negotiation is between the Parliament and the Council on an ordinary legislation, so then it has to be the Council that we are waiting for. But that's completely understandable, and please take your time. At the same time, I would like to give maybe one question, maybe to the ambassador, because my understanding is that the Commission is actually completely ready to do the financing part, the facility, the continuation of MFA Plus in the form of 26. If the S word hits the fan, so then and the calendar gets really difficult, and we are celebrating Christmas and we have 1 week left and no money for Ukraine on the 1st of January. And then the question maybe is, are you ready for the 26? Is the Czech Republic ready for the 26? Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's, let me say that it's not so much about Ukraine, it's about MMF, the discussions we have. I think that there is, across all the member states, clearly the idea, and we are convinced that what is needed to be done is create this Ukrainian facility. The rest of MMF, there are more questions inside. So I would not be afraid about this. Of course, we know that's, and we do remember our presidency, how it looked like macro-financial assistance, and we ended as we ended with the discussion during the last European Council. I hope we will be ready before, but Czech Republic is definitely ready. For us, it's not a question.
Thank you. So I would like to now open it to your question. So if you could please always introduce yourself and tell us which of the panelists you are asking the question. So, gentleman over there, yes.
I have a kind of a booming.
Please wait for the microphone. So if someone is.
Thank you. Wonderful panel. My name is Ricardo. I'm from Lisbon. I would like to zoom out just a little bit, and I will ask Kira and Ondřej to give me your thoughts on this. There's been a lot of discussion about EU strategic autonomy, particularly, and as Kira said correctly, so 2024 is coming. We have elections in the United States. We have no way of knowing, at least right now, how that's going to come out, but we know one of the scenarios. So, as an MP, as Vice President of ALDE party, and also in the Ukrainian Parliament, what do you think about this? What do you think about this concept of getting away from the United States, becoming our own military, political, economic strength, and help Ukraine with that? Thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. Well, I think you have to be prepared for the worst. It's always not a bad strategy. And we don't have much time of making this decision because I think we would know like in a year from now, like what the situation would be. And a year in our political climate is not enough to put together a strategy and then to execute it, right? Especially with the fairly short electoral cycles. I think in terms of military, not rather independence, but strengthening. I think there is no other way right now with what we know. And recently we faced this issue of European countries promising Ukraine 1 million of not ammunition, artillery ammunition, yes. And then right now you said that it would be impossible to fulfill that. And that's a very bad sign for me, because there are countries who promised Russia the same, and they were able to fulfill that. And so we are right now like looking at very straightforward reflection of ourselves in the mirror, and there's definitely something that would need to be done, no matter how the elections in the United States would end up. And that calls for strengthening, how they say it, Eastern NATO wing, or because for the United States we are all East NATO wing, and for figuring out what would be like longer term strategy no matter what happens. And I do not think that we see that right now, so having that strategy, especially with the things that are, so many things that are happening rapidly. The main issue that, if you look like again a couple of abstractions up, is that authoritarian regimes, they can have a luxury of planning 50 years ahead and not having parliaments and all and publicity to deal with, and they can move with whatever direction they want. Democracies are slower. Democracies are stronger long-term, but if we know about ourselves that we are slower, then we have to prepare in advance. And this is what we are calling, saying, you think that you would need less weapons in 5 years? We do not think that that's the case. And you think you would need less military budgets in 5 years? There is no thing in the world that proves this theory, right? So I think we would know soon enough, and it's on us to be prepared and start planning ahead right now.
Thank you. So the next question, the man in the back sits quite.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Tomáš Valsivček, and first of all, thank you very much for a nice discussion. If you allow me, I would have 2 questions. The first one may be more targeted at Mr. Kovařík.
It's Mr. Knotek, actually.
Sorry, Mr. Knotek, Ondřej. I'm wondering if within the context of rising populism and rise of the far right and fake news, don't you think that opening the discussion on the treaties of the EU could actually backfire and reduce the powers that are allocated to Brussels?
To be very honest, I'm not sure if I have understood your question. So if you may ask in different words, please.
Yeah, if we open the debate on the institutional treaties and on allocating, for example, making the decisions in foreign policy based on a qualified majority, don't you think in some areas this could actually, for example, populist parties would turn this around and demand that Brussels has less power, actually?
If I may, I am not Mr. Knotek, but I should, as I said in the discussion, the debate has already started. It was opened by German Chancellor who started the debate in his lecture in Prague, so it's here. So it's not like whether we should open it or not, it's open, right?
If that was the answer, I can be comfortable with that. Yeah. Then the question is legitimate, and we have here the question. I put it a different way. We want to be strong, okay? And can we be strong as an EU through strong member states, or a strong EU as a strong federal EU, or a strong EU through centralized so-called Brussels bubble, not listening to arguments of the others? And of course, if that question is on the table, some people can say, and maybe abuse the debate for something that you can call populism, whatever the definition of populism is. So perhaps you are right, but it is part of the equation, as I said, and we need to solve it. The West holds the power a certain way, and it will be a compromise between losing the power, losing the sovereignty, and accepting that the central point of Europe would move if Western Balkan and Ukraine joins in certain way. Yeah. And by the way, when I was talking about different layers of Europe, multiple speed, I was even considering that to this format of Mr. Juncker, the Czech Republic would fit, not to the core, not definitely today. So it was not only to say that the newcomers should stay somewhere as a second class. No, I see it already among existing members. So I hope I could I answered your question. A second very short reaction on the first question. Question raised. You asked me on the question. What was the question, Mr.? Yes, strategic autonomy. I think it's already given because the COVID crisis and now the energy crisis simply change the citizens' wishes. And now it's not only about the army, it's also about medicals, it's also about energy. Now the strategic autonomy, and if not immediately strategic autonomy, then open strategic autonomy is a request by the population. So the political parties are reacting on it, both on EU, on national levels, and I think it is given that Europe will be in, or at least will try to be much more sovereign in the critical fields. Whether our pathway is successful, will be successful, and we will be competitive with the US that have different approach, with the Asia, that's a question mark, of course. But the trend is given, and I see it on the daily basis. Thank you.
And if you allow me, then the second question still, or already moving. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Philip Lausberg. I'm from the European Policy Center, and I'm working on political economy topics. And as you all know, at the moment, there's a lot of talk about economic security in Brussels and the European capitals. And my question is, how much should actually economic security play a role when we talk about accession of Ukraine? Because Ukraine, of course, is very rich when it comes to minerals, when it comes to agriculture, but also to a very well-educated workforce. And when it comes to energy, nuclear power is already being transferred to Europe, but hydropower, or the opportunity of using green hydrogen through the existing pipeline system and so on. I think there's a lot of plans that the EU has, the Net Zero Industry Act, the Critical Raw Materials Act, all these plans are there, but it's hard to fulfill them. Ukraine could be a very good opportunity to step in there, and I think that could be used also when we talk about accession as an argument to convince member states to be in favor. What do you think is this, what kind of role is this playing now, and do you think this should be used more as an argument, and do you see this as an opportunity to get ahead, maybe also quicker with accession? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's for everyone.
Okay, so but I would like to start with Tony and then Edita.
Well, I think it's clear that Ukraine, in terms of size, geographical size, population, economic potential, as it rebuilds from war, would be easily the most significant of the candidates for enlargement. So in that sense, it would be, in principle, highly beneficial to everyone in the EU to see Ukraine with a rapidly expanding economy, also done in a kind of green way, which, I mean, I think there's a lot of work being done on this. However, this is not, I'm afraid to have to say this, put in some notes of caution yet again, but it won't be a completely smooth ride. I mean, we have seen issues of friction arise in recent months, first over the question of agricultural exports with Poland and a couple of others in Central and Eastern Europe, and then most recently with a dispute over truckers. And these are the kind of things that we can expect more of, to be quite frank, as the prospect of Ukraine fully integrating into the economic sphere of the EU emerges. So it won't be easy. And the question is how those types of tensions, they remind me a little bit of when the big enlargement of 2004 to 7 took place, and we saw things being cropping up in debate in France, in the UK at the time, and Belgium, and so on, about the infamous Polish plumber, and a lot of disputes about the rights of workers who would move from Central and Eastern Europe into Western Europe, and so on. This could easily repeat itself in the case of Ukraine, and it just needs, as I said earlier, level-headed, mature leadership to stop these things getting out of control. But I don't think they'll go away.
Yeah, I agree. It will definitely not go away. Whoever will be approaching the EU, we see, and speaking about economic security, it's not only about Ukraine, it's also about Norway, for example, and how closely Norway is bound to the European Union or not. And this is also what was behind the meeting, the first meeting of the wider Europe in Prague, the summit which took place last year and was repeated and in Chisinau and again now in Sevilla, EPC. And I think it's important that the European Union finds good partners and allies in the world who are where we can have mutual confidence. And this is what you said about the strategic autonomy, if it should be open or not. Of course, should be open because we need the allies across the world, and we need to foster our economy. The COVID and the war show that we are able to do more, and for that we need the countries which are also around us. And when we are speaking about how they will be shifting the power and the decision making, we should not forget that not only now everybody repeats it's going to the east. It's going to the east-south in general. So it's not about that what the ex-Eastern Europe wishes and which one historical experiences we have. It goes also southwards, looking at Balkans, looking at the countries which are closer to the sea and have totally different priorities, have also different challenges, like migration, for example. And to me, having Ukraine as a part of the European Union or having Ukraine much closer will be totally advantage for the European Union. But again, coming back to that, what we were speaking about before, we need to see how the decision-making process will look like, and what also that the internal debates with our citizens will be very, very important. And there the political leadership needs to be ready, and it will be clearly showed through the elections. And what is important is that it's not only up to our citizens, it's also up to the other citizens. If they really want to be part of something what the European Union is today, if they would wish at a certain moment really give up certain topics, symbols, and again, example of the Czech Republic, look at us. We are not part of Eurozone yet, because the Czech crown has a very strong symbolism, and there are of course many discussions about that, how important is it for the central bank having the possibility to correct certain problems nationally. But for the people in their minds, the Czech crowns means certain independence, certain this being Czech after so many years under the, let's say, almost Russian occupation, and even Russian occupation in our case. This is something what takes, I think, one, maybe 2 generations. And if something like the currency is a symbol for that, it's quite difficult to explain to the people that maybe Eurozone membership will be much better than that what we have today.
you. So I think we have this. Okay.
Thank you. Considering the breakout of the new war in Middle East, do you feel that this would have like an impact on the Ukrainian integration and maybe slow down the process?
This is for me. So it's hard to say about the integration. What I definitely can say that we feel that it could have an impact on the military assistance that we are receiving, because the fact is there is, well, at least right now, there is a fixed amount of weapons, supplies, ammunition that is being produced in democratic countries or the places where we can buy it. It's like not growing exponentially, unfortunately. So we would want 100% of everything that's being produced that could help us fight to go to Ukraine. We know that with everything that's happening in Middle East, there would be some distraction and there would be some division of those weapons and supplies. And this is why, of course, it is a threat. In terms of EU integration, I think we are avoiding the topic right now because we are talking about things that we can control, is how much EU integration depends on what's going to happen at the battlefield. And that there would be, well, in my perspective, there's only one end to the war is Ukraine wins and regains all our territories and then figures out how Russia would not attack again. But we have absolutely no timeline right now to when this is going to happen. And that is something that would definitely affect the process of the integration and the speed of this integration. Though in my heart, I would want otherwise.
Yeah, I think the Middle East war actually could have a lesson for Ukraine and the enlargement process in this sense. In a number of EU countries, the Middle East war has split societies right down the middle. You've had pro-Israeli sentiment on the one hand and pro-Palestinians on the other. There've been the public going out in large marches. There've been clashes between politicians. In France, you had the upheaval on the French left because of the public remarks of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, left splitting up over this. And that, although no two situations are the same, Ukraine's not the same as the Middle East, but it is not impossible to imagine a situation in which emotions became raw over the subject of Ukraine as it moved closer towards joining the EU. The second thing that needs keeping in mind is the larger world perspective of the Middle East crisis in Europe, and that is the question of the need to sustain the support of governments and peoples outside Europe for the European position on Ukraine. This has taken a bit of a hit, quite frankly, because of the Middle East crisis. It's left Europe exposed to criticism that it has one set of standards regarding the war in Ukraine and another regarding the Middle East. I don't share that view, but I can tell you it's quite widely held around countries in Asia, Africa, South America. So these types of crises, the Middle East being the most prominent at the moment, they can impact in an indirect way on the question of the EU-Ukrainian relationship, yes.
Thank you. So we have a... what do you want to say? Okay, like a last... okay, so after one more question. So we have a space for last question. But I don't see any. So I will have one which I wanted to ask you before, and then we will have a little space for the last, because, well, it's more like a remark, but I think that if you emphasize too much this like hope for so much resources getting out of frozen Russian assets, I'm myself quite skeptical with it. If you look at some investigative pieces, for instance, in Wall Street Journal was writing about in Bloomberg, it's extremely complicated process. With the yachts, for instance, it's, we are getting to an absurd situation where that these states in Caribbean and elsewhere where these yachts are parked have to pay millions and millions to maintain them, because if they don't do it, the price of the yacht is growing dramatically down. In few years it would cost nothing. They have to pay the wages of captains and etc. I didn't know how complicated and absurd it is, and there is no easy way to. It might be easier to force European Union to issue bonds again like it did during the pandemic, maybe, even though Germans said at the time that it was the first and last time. But it's just my remark that, and I would like your reactions on it. Like, it seems to me a little bit dangerous to send it like a message to the public that it's just like we will take everything Russian and freeze it and we will finance reconstruct, because it's legally it's going to be extremely complicated. It's Edita also wanted to react on this.
Only to clarify, we are speaking about the interests from the frozen assets, not about the assets as such. And this is the first point. It's about the assets of the Russian central bank. It's not everything belonging to whomever. This is we have to have in mind. And the third point is, of course, that it could be theoretically used if we find the right formula for that. That would be absolutely fine. But these assets are only in 3 or 4 member states. They're not in each and every one member states. We have something what was deposited by the Russian central bank. Only technical point.
Thank you. Madam Ambassador, you are absolutely right. So I would need to clarify. When we are talking about $500 billion, it's 2 types of assets. They are all frozen, so there is no need to take any action to them right now. They were frozen under the sanctions at the very beginning of full-scale invasion. Around 350 billion is Russian state money. So money that Putin was preparing for the war and stored state assets in different European states, Japan and United States and a little bit Canada. And you don't have to investigate it, you don't have to pay money for maintaining it, it's just there and they are frozen, sanctioned. One, and there is an interesting going on them, and my closer goal, and our as a country closer goal is to at least have the interest that is going on that being directed to Ukraine. The second part, the 150 billion euros in dollars, it's amount of oligarch assets. And there, I totally agree, it's a complicated matter. There, we are working together with Bill Browder, author of the Magnitsky List, and he can tell you, and he told me it so many times, that there is a strong fight against the best lawyer in the world, and at the end you will get probably 100 or 200 euros done after all the legislation. But the issue, another issue is that right now when all those assets are frozen in the states are actually paying for maintaining them. So there should be a solution that at some point confiscating them or selling them would be a better solution that for the state to pay constantly for maintaining the mansions, for maintaining the yachts, etc., etc. So it's again, then there are 2 main things that needed to confiscate them. The first one is a legal solution, and the second one is a political will. For the legal solution, again, we are acting as pirates, and we are looking at any kind of legal solutions that can be proposed. Bonds, this, that, deciding to take, this is Kaja Kallas's idea, I think, deciding to take a loan against having the current money being support for this, any kind. And there are ways to find a solution there. The next question is the political will, because again, to take the stand, especially against Russian state assets, is a dangerous step, and it's a bold move, and of course it could have some consequences. But this is where we are also working, and the complicated level of the task does not stop it of being right and just and proper way of doing that. Because I do not think that we have people in this room who can imagine that Russia willingly would pay for the restoration of Ukraine, would pay the reparations, etc. Right? We do not think so, and we do not hope that. We can think that it could happen in 50 years, but this is not what we as a country could afford. And then it comes that then there should be somebody who would pay for that. And we would pay it in Ukraine, and we are paying the price every single day. But there would be other people who did not do their harm, and they would still have to be like financially responsible for that. And this, again, that tears me apart the injustice that comes at this. And this is why I so strongly believe that if we gather here next year, we will have so much more progress, because when we gathered in similar with Alva's invitation last year, there has been no progress at all, and the whole room like this were thinking that I am and that it's completely impossible and hard and cannot be done. Well, it can, and we will be pushing for that.
So thank you very much, so this is the end of our discussion, and I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank all to all panelists, to Ambassador Edita Hrdá, Tony Barber from Financial Times, Kira from ALDE party, and Ukrainian Parliament, Ondřej Knotek, member of European Parliament. And thanks again to all of you. Thanks again to European Liberal Forum to helping to organize it. I would like to thank my team back in Prague who spent a lot of work on it, and especially I would like to thank Prague House and Lucia's team for preparing everything. And I would like to invite all of you for downstairs for drinks and refreshment and some food, so we can continue with the discussion informally over the drinks. So enjoy yourself, and thanks for coming, and see you again. Okay. I thought you did already.
No, that's not.
Sorry. There is one last remark from Kira. Okay.
Oh, now you put me into a position when I'm standing between people and food. That's like the worst place to be there. But it's my favorite story, and I really want to share it with you to bring us back to basics. So how many of you have been to Ukraine? No? Some? Okay, good. So it was the first day of full-scale invasion, and the bombarding of Kiev started at 5 a.m. We woke up with the bombs, and Ukrainian constitution has a very clear explanation of what the parliament should do at a time like this. We should gather inside the chambers and vote for the martial law to begin. And so we started calling each other from political party leaders, asking even if we can get people in, because nobody knew what's happening and like where everybody is, and people were evacuating their families, and the city was in distraction, and the bombs were everywhere. And plus, we've got this comment from our security team that said, absolutely not. And the reason for that is Ukrainian parliament is located in the middle of a huge park. And it's very visible and very obvious, and like for any Russian missile or plane, it was like no-brainer to hit that. So we gathered in the underneath, in the underground tunnel of the parliament, how many people we can get, and we were waiting for the green light. So for those of you who have not been to Ukrainian parliament, it's an old Soviet building that was created in the style of monumentalism, so that even if you are a member of parliament, you are still small and significant to the building of communism and socialism. And so imagine that building covered with the bags of sand in the windows, and with the lights turned off and with many military people. And we at some point got the clearance from the security saying, no matter how many are of you, will have 10 minutes in and out. And we were running into the chambers to vote for the martial law. And I remember that when we got into this dark chambers and we looked around, we have seen that of 420 members of parliament, almost 300 came. And for the 10 minutes that we were desperately clicking our buttons, calling for the whole world to stand with us, to help us, showing to Ukrainian people that we did not run and we will be fighting with them, we were holding hands and we were singing our national anthem. It was one of the most emotional moments of my life, but we also made a vow between our political powers and parties that no matter how long it would take, no matter how painful it would be, we will stand together until we win the war. And at that moment, I should remind you, most of intelligences of the whole world did not believe that we will stand for more than 2 or 3 days. And the fact that we are still fighting and that I'm here today has 2 main reasons. The first is the brave men and women of Ukraine that are fighting at the front right now. But the second reason is the brave men and women from outside, from the whole world, who stood with us and are standing with us. And when we are talking about important things, expansion and bureaucratic problems and reasons and processes, I want us to remember the basic of it, the basic reason of why we are fighting and what we are doing and where we want to be. Thank you so much for all of your support and good words that being said for my country. And glory to Ukraine.